In session 9, we will discuss concepts and theories related to individual and group decision making. Before we discuss how decisions are made in organizations, we need to consider types of decisions that are made. First, decisions can be made based upon how structured the decision-making process is. Thus, program decisions are routine decisions that address specific problems and result in relatively structured solution, whereas non-program decisions are novel decisions that require unique solutions. When considering the impact of decisions on organizational operations, we can classify decisions into strategic decisions that address the long-term direction and focus of the organization, and operational decisions that focus on the day-to-day running of the company. Finally, if we consider the process by which decisions are made, we can categorize decisions into top-down decisions, which are directive decisions made solely by managers who then pass them down to lower-level employees for implementation, and decentralized decisions, which occur when employees, not managers, make decisions about their work, including staffing, production, scheduling, and resource allocation. Decision-making is considered one of the critical activities that managers need to perform on a daily basis. Therefore, it is important to understand various decision-making processes. A well-known process is called the rational decision-making process. The model consists of 6 steps. First, a person must recognize the existence of a problem and the need for a decision. It is important to understand that it's possible that a problem actually exists but not recognized. In this case, the person will not engage in the decision-making process. Second, after recognizing the problem, the person attempts to identify the objective of the decision. After the objective of the decision is established, the person establishes criteria for evaluating possible alternatives. At step 4, the person identifies and evaluates every possible alternative. An important assumption here is that the person must be able to list and evaluate every possible alternative. After listing and evaluating all possible alternatives, the best alternative is chosen and implemented. Additionally, the person gathers feedback related to the implemented alternative. If the alternative successfully resolves the problem, the rational decision-making process ends. However, if the alternative does not resolve the problem, the person will go back to the first step of the rational decision-making process. Because the rational decision-making process is a step-by-step decision-making process, it emphasizes the importance of rationality. In other words, the model can be viewed as a logical step-by-step approach to decision-making, with a thorough analysis of alternatives and their consequences. Given the emphasis on rationality, the rational decision-making process has 4 characteristics. First, the outcome resulting from implementing rational decision-making model will be completely rational. Second, the decision maker uses a consistent system to choose the best alternative. Third, the decision maker is aware of all alternatives. Finally, the decision maker can calculate the probability of success for each alternative. Although the rational decision-making process argues that it allows decision makers to make rational decisions, it is not typically used by us. One important reason comes from human limitations. For instance, can a decision maker really be completely rational? Can a decision maker list all positive alternatives? These human limitations therefore suggest the use of bounded rationality decision making, which proposes that there are limits to how rational a decision maker can actually be. One of the important characteristics of the bounded rationality decision making is the concept of satisficing, which assumes that decision makers satisfice. That is, decision makers select the first available alternative that is good enough because of the time or resource constraints. Thus, decision makers are comfortable making decisions without identifying all the alternatives. In addition to choosing the first alternative that is good enough, decision makers often use their intuition, which represents knowing something instinctively based upon expertise and past experience. However, the use of intuition may result in making irrational decisions. Of course, A human tendency is that we incorporate our emotions into our decision-making process. While it is not necessarily negative to incorporate our emotions into our decision-making process, it has the potential to lead to biased and irrational decision outcomes. So far, we've discussed two major decision-making models. It is important to understand that each of the decision-making models has its own limitations. However, there is a limitation that all the decision-making models share. That is, the decision maker's unwillingness to abandon a bad decision. This particular behavior is called escalation of commitment, which refers to the tendency to continue to support a failing course of action. So why does escalation of commitment occur? First, according to cognitive dissonance theory, people dislike inconsistencies. This means that when we stop supporting our decisions, we are telling ourselves that we made wrong decisions, which can make us feel inadequate and uncomfortable. Therefore, to resolve this discomfort, individuals typically engage in behaviors that support their past decisions, even when those decisions are bad decisions. Second, when we are overly optimistic, we tend to increase our commitment to bad decisions. Third, when we perceive that we are in control of our future, we also exhibit escalation of commitment. Finally, when we perceive that we have already invested a lot of time, effort, and resources that support the bad decision, we are likely to exhibit escalation of commitment. Previously, we discussed individual decision-making. Now we will focus on group decision-making. The first concept is how leaders facilitate group decision-making. There are 5 different leadership styles that affect how groups make decisions. First, an autocratic leadership style refers to centralizing authority, making decisions alone, and expecting followers or subordinates simply to follow instructions. Second, a democratic leadership style refers to sharing decision-making with others and encouraging subordinates to be involved in setting goals. Third, a consultative leader seeks inputs from others but makes the final decision alone. Fourth, a participative leader gives employees a say in the decision. Finally, a laissez-faire leadership style gives employees discretion to make decisions and perform their work any way they want. So when should groups really participate in decision making? While it is highly depends on situations, there are 3 broad factors that we consider. The first is managerial factors, which reflects whether the manager's personal values, tolerance for ambiguity, confidence in subordinates, and the manager's leadership behaviors can motivate the manager to use groups to make decisions. Second, we need to consider whether subordinates need for independence, willingness to take responsibility, tolerance for ambiguity, problem-solving interest, comprehension of and commitment to goals, relevant knowledge and experience, and expectations about participating in decision-making can influence whether a manager uses groups to make decisions. Finally, there are situational factors such as time constraints, ability of the group to work together, organizational type, and nature of the problem that may or may not encourage the use of groups to make decisions. Like individual decision-making, group decision-making also has errors. For instance, group polarization, which refers to the tendency of people to make more extreme decisions in a group than when alone, reinforces people to make risky and problematic decisions. The reason for this to occur is that people tend to feel that every group member is responsible for decision outcomes rather than one single person. This shared responsibility, therefore, encourages risk-taking and extreme behaviors, which explains the concept of risky shift. Finally, groupthink typically occurs when using groups to make decisions. Groupthink refers to a mode of thinking that people engage in when they are deeply involved in a cohesive in-group. Groupthink can also be motivated when the members strive for consensus, which in turn overrides their motivation to realistically apprise alternative courses of action. Due to the impact of group decision-making errors, we will next briefly discuss how to enhance group decision-making effectiveness. First, we can utilize brainstorming, which refers to a process for developing creative solutions. Keep in mind that there should be no criticism to any idea offered in the brainstorming process. Otherwise, people will not be motivated to offer new and unique ideas. Second, we can use the nominal group technique, which is a structured variation of a small group discussion to reach consensus. Finally, we can implement the Delphi method, which gathers experts' judgments through successive iterations of a questionnaire, resulting in a decision by consensus. The last topic to be addressed in this session is ethical decision making. There are 5 principles that we can apply. First, the utilitarian standard suggests that the ethical decision is the one that strikes the best balance of good over harm. Second, the rights standard describes that the ethical decision is the one that best respects and protects the moral rights of all of those affected by the decision. Third, the fairness standard focuses on making ethical decisions that treat all people equally, or at least fairly, based on some defensible standards. Fourth, the common good standard reflects making ethical decisions that show respect and compassion for all others, especially the most vulnerable. Finally, the virtue standard emphasizes making ethical decisions that are consistent with certain ideas and virtues, including honesty, courage, compassion, fairness, and generosity. Keep in mind that whether we can make ethical decisions or what principles that we apply when making ethical decisions can be influenced by our cultural norms and values, pressures or threats from supervisors, or plain unrealistic goals.